Welcome back to my 16,260 incredible students. This is English is Easy, and I am your personal YouTube English teacher, Connor. Today, we are going to learn English with a story. I've titled this story, Terror on the Water. It is a really scary story, and it is a true story about being lost in the ocean and surrounded by killer sharks. So here's the plan for today. First, I will quickly read the story to you. It will just take me a couple minutes. You can sit back, relax, and listen as I do so. Then we will have a vocabulary breakdown and talk at length and in depth about some of the more difficult words we saw in the story. Then we will have a deep dive into the story, rereading it and going line by line to make sure we understand everything crystal clear. Finally, at the end of today's lesson, we will have a discussion question and an opportunity to practice our spoken English. If all of that sounds good to you, pretend that your hand is a hungry shark and that the like button is looking really delicious. Swim your way over to the like button and give it a bite. Terror on the water. It was a dark night in the Pacific Ocean, and suddenly there was a loud explosion. An American ship called the USS Indianapolis had been hit, and a terrible nightmare was about to begin. In July 1945, the USS Indianapolis had a secret mission to deliver parts for an atomic bomb to the island of Tinian. After finishing their mission, the ship sailed towards the Philippines, not knowing the danger ahead. On the night of July 30th, 1945, 2 torpedoes from a Japanese submarine hit the ship, causing terrible damage. In minutes, the USS Indianapolis sank into the deep ocean, leaving nearly 900 men in the water with bloodthirsty sharks. The explosion caused chaos, but the real terror began in the water. Surrounded by darkness and the unknown, the survivors clung to debris, hoping for rescue. As hours turned into days, the men faced great fear like never before. Dehydration, sunburn, and the hot sun made things worse, but an even bigger threat was the behemoth size of the ocean and the endless waves. For 4 long days, the crew faced shark attack after shark attack. The ocean became a fight for survival, where each moment was a battle against the sharks. The men's courage to stay alive was pushed to the limit. They knew this was a sink or swim situation. Just when all hope seemed lost, on August 2nd, a plane on a routine patrol saw the survivors. Rescue operations started quickly, and 316 men were saved from the water, finally putting an end to their nightmare. Many of the men felt traumatized by the experience. The story of the USS Indianapolis reminds us of the sacrifices made during wartime and the strong human spirit that fights to stay alive against all odds. All right, awesome job, guys. That was a quick look at this terrifying tale. What I'd like to do now is jump into the vocabulary breakdown and just talk about a couple of these challenging words. We will start with traumatized. Traumatized, an adjective meaning mental anguish after experiencing something intensely upsetting. In other words, when you can't unsee something awful. Some similar words might be shell-shocked, might be scarred, might be troubled by, if you are troubled by something, scarred by something, or an incident left you feeling shell-shocked. These are all different ways of expressing this idea of being traumatized. In the story we saw, many of the men felt traumatized by the experience. Yeah, these guys were left, treading water. Treading water, if this is them in the water, they're trying to stay afloat, right? So we call that treading water. They were left treading water in the ocean for days with hungry sharks. And this experience, looking back on it, it fills them with mental anguish. Anguish is like pain, suffering, right? And what they had experienced was intensely upsetting. It made them really upset in a very intense way. Now they cannot unsee the awful things that they witnessed, that they experienced at that time, right? Okay, so this was a really traumatizing event for them to go through, okay? Here's an unrelated example sentence. He was traumatized by the things he saw during the war. Yeah, maybe another way of thinking about this is a little bit of PTSD, okay? Post-traumatic stress disorder. In other words, you experience something intense and you cannot forget about it. It continues to bother you, continues to upset you as you try to move on with your life. It's tough to let it go. All right, if you are a channel member following along at home, you can draw an image of something that reminds you of this idea of being traumatized. But for me, I know what I'm going to draw because when I was a little kid, I experienced something that traumatized me, something that was traumatic, okay? At least to a little kid, it felt very traumatic, all right? So here's what happened. I had a sock. Here's a picture of my sock, right? And inside the sock was a spider. Okay, I'm going to draw 8 legs on the spider. And, I put my foot into the sock. And at first, I didn't notice anything. But after a few seconds, I felt movement. I felt something crawling against my foot, tickling the skin of my foot. And it left me feeling like this. Here's a picture of my face, right? I was really traumatized after this happened. I was really upset by this, and putting on socks for months after that incident, I was really careful and really unnerved, really upset. Up next, we have behemoth. A behemoth. Okay, what does that mean? If something is a behemoth, then that means it is extremely large and powerful, like a very large and powerful thing or creature. In other words, a giant or a monster. So in the story, we saw this sentence. An even bigger threat was the behemoth size of the ocean and the endless waves. So these ocean waves were huge. They were powerful. We can describe them as being behemoth waves, like giant waves, monster waves, right? And even worse, they are endless waves. They just keep coming and coming and coming without any end in sight, right? So that was what we saw in the story. The word behemoth was used to describe the size of these ocean waves. Now, here's an unrelated and kind of interesting example sentence. The company became a behemoth in the industry. Okay, so we can also describe a really large thing as this. It doesn't have to be a creature. It doesn't have to be an animal, right? We can describe a wave this way. We could describe a company this way, okay? So the company became a behemoth in the industry. They became a titan. We could also say a titan just means giant in the industry. So this sounds like a really big, influential and important company. Now, it wasn't always that way. Maybe this company had humble beginnings. Maybe this company began in a very humble place, a small place. It was just a small mom and pop company. If a store, if a business is just owned by a small family, we can call it a mom and pop store. Mom is mom, pop is dad, right? A mom and dad type store. So maybe the company began as a mom and pop operation, but it ended up becoming a behemoth in the industry, a titan in the industry, a giant in the industry. I think for the image here, what I'm going to draw is here are some normal-sized ocean waves, and here is a boat sailing on the ocean, and then over here we have a giant behemoth wave, and the giant behemoth wave is going to crash down on this boat. So we have a guy who is looking really terrified, and maybe he's going to jump off the boat into the water to try and get away from this behemoth wave. Now, here's an interesting idiom, sink or swim, okay? It means that you are in a situation where you must succeed, or if you fail, you are going to face dire consequences. Dire consequences. A consequence is, we've talked about this before, a very bad thing that happens as a result of doing something, right? I didn't check my sock for spiders as a kid, and as a consequence of that, I stuck my foot in there and felt a spider on my foot, right? That was the consequence of not checking my sock beforehand, right? So a dire consequence, we could also say a severe consequence, a really, really bad consequence, okay? So this idea of sink or swim, this is a very high stakes situation, a high stakes scenario. Like if you fail, there is a lot on the line. There's a lot on the line. That means you could lose a lot if you don't succeed. So we have a lot of different ways to express this idea in English. We sometimes say, make it or break it, do or die, or maybe we could even say that if a situation is really dire, you've been thrown in the lion's den. You were thrown, tossed into the lion's den. That's where the lion lives, right? Maybe we could say lair, okay? The home of a villain, the home of a beast, of a monster is, we call that the lair, or its den, right? So if you are thrown into the lion's den, you have two choices, sink or swim, fight the lion or be eaten by the lion, okay? So in the story we saw in the shark-infested waters, it was truly a sink or swim situation, right? So shark-infested waters. There is an infestation of sharks in the water. That means there are so many sharks, right? There's like a shark problem. There's an overwhelming amount of sharks in the water. Sometimes your house will get a bug infestation if you're very unlucky, right? There will be an infestation of some kind of bug in your home, and you have to call the exterminators to come gas your house, right? They come to your home and they put a big curtain, right? A big curtain over your house. You're not able to live there for a while, and they smoke it out. They smoke it out. They smoke bomb your house, okay? Or we sometimes call that bug bomb. They bug bomb your house if you have an infestation of bugs. But in this situation, we're talking about an infestation of sharks in the water. And because of that, because there is an infestation, so many of these sharks, it is truly a sink or swim situation. We could also say it is really a sink or swim situation. So here's a different context for this. Starting a new job can be a sink or swim experience. Starting a new job can be a sink or swim situation or experience, right? There's a lot of pressure when you start a new job, when you begin a new role at a company, at a store, wherever it is that you're working. There can be a lot of pressure in the beginning. You might think, ooh, I really need to do well, or they might let me go. You really want to prove yourself in the beginning and show your fellow employees, show your boss, your employer, what it is you can do, what you're capable of. You want to make a good first impression. And it can feel like a sink or swim situation. You either need to try really hard and succeed, or you might sink, right? You might get fired. Okay, I am going to draw another image here. I just love ocean pictures, drawing ocean scenes. I think water is so fun to draw. Look, here's an island, right? And we have a guy who's swimming in the water, looking really afraid. He's swimming as fast as he can, trying to get to this island, and there is a shark chasing him, okay? So he is in a sink or swim situation, or maybe we could call this a get eaten or swim situation, okay? He needs to make it to safety. If he succeeds, that's a big win. If he doesn't succeed, that's a big loss. It's a sink or swim situation. All right, guys, if you are still with me, then you are doing a fantastic job. Give yourself a pat on the back for investing in your future as an English speaker. Great work, okay? Now we're going to move on to the deep dive of the story. So let's go sentence by sentence and make sure we understand all of this really thoroughly, in depth, in detail, okay? So terror on the water. Terror just means fear, okay? Extreme fear. If I think about fear, it's maybe at this level. Terror is up here. It's way more intense than fear, okay? It was a dark night in the Pacific Ocean, and suddenly there was a loud explosion, okay? Something blows up. Boom, I will draw an explosion right here. A giant explosion. An American ship, so a ship that belongs to the Americans. It's called the USS Indianapolis. The USS Indianapolis, named after a city, had been hit. It's been hit. Something has collided with it or run into it. And a terrible nightmare was about to begin. So things are about to get really dire, really dicey, we can say. If a situation gets really dicey, then things are not looking good. It's a really risky situation. In July of 1945, the USS Indianapolis had a secret mission to deliver parts for an atomic bomb to the island of Tinian. Okay, I hope I'm saying that island's name correctly. Tinian. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. So this ship, they had a mission, right? They had something they wanted to do. They had a task. They had this duty that they were trying to accomplish, and it was a secret mission, okay? They were trying to keep it on the DL. What does that mean? If you want to keep something on the DL, DL means down low. So if you say, hey, I'll tell you something, but keep it on the DL. Keep it on the DL. Wow, native speakers would be really impressed if you were able to say that, if you were able to use that. It basically means, okay, I'll tell you something, but it's our secret. Don't go around telling people about this, right? So they were trying to keep something on the DL. They were trying to keep this mission on the down low. What were they doing? They were delivering parts for an atomic bomb, an atom bomb, a really powerful weapon, okay, to this island, the island of Tinian, okay? So they finished their mission, And after finishing this mission, the ship sailed to their next destination towards the Philippines, the country of the Philippines, but they were unaware. They were not knowing of the danger ahead. They didn't know all of the danger in store for them. In store for them. Basically, that's an expression meaning this danger is ahead of them. Okay, there's danger waiting for them. Okay, so on the night of July 30th, 1945, it's nighttime. 2 torpedoes from a Japanese submarine hit the ship. Let's start with that, okay? So if here's the ocean surface and here's a ship on top of the ocean surface, on the ocean surface, a submarine is a ship that operates down below the surface, and torpedoes are the bombs that they shoot. It's like an underwater missile, right? They shoot 2 torpedoes, bam, bam. The USS Indianapolis is hit twice, okay, causing terrible damage. We could also say extensive damage. Extensive damage. It means the damage extends. The damage has spread to a lot of different areas. Like the ship has been really terribly struck. You know, it's in really bad shape. The ship is in bad shape. In minutes, the USS Indianapolis sank into the deep ocean. Oof. Leaving nearly 900 men in the water with bloodthirsty sharks. Oh no, this is a really terrible situation. And honestly, this is a really heart-wrenching story. A heart-wrenching story. Heart-wrenching story. It really hits you right in the feels. Oof. Right in the feels. Okay, it's kind of an internet term, an internet expression. Oh, right in the feels, right in the feelings. Now, why do I say that? Because remember, guys, this is a true story. This is one of the scariest, most horrible things that happened during the war. And all of these guys were so traumatized, you know, by this, or they were killed. It's a really dark story. Okay, so you know, their ship sank into the deep ocean, or we can say into the depths of the ocean. Into the depths. That means down into the deep part of the ocean. And what happened? This left nearly 900 men, so almost 900 men in the water with the bloodthirsty sharks. You know, here they are in the water. The sharks are circling them, picking them off one by one, picking them off, taking them out one by one, killing them, eating them one by one after the next, we could also say. Here's the longest page in the story. The explosion caused chaos. We could also say disarray. Disarray, okay? This was a really chaotic situation, a crazy situation, right? When the explosion, or should say the explosions, right? Because there were 2 torpedoes, when that initially happened, there was a lot of chaos. It was a really hectic situation. Everyone was panicking, running around. I'm sure some people were knocked over or even knocked out, knocked unconscious. So that was bad, but it gets worse. But the real terror began in the water. Okay, so once they were in the water, that's where the real terror, the real horror, we could also say horror, really began. These guys in the water, they were surrounded by darkness. Darkness was all around them. And the unknown, okay, darkness and the unknown. So in other words, they can't see, they don't know what's around them or below them. There could be sharks swimming below their legs in the dark water. The survivors, the people who weren't killed by the explosions or dragged down with the ship. These people who had survived thus far, they clung to debris. I know it looks like this word is pronounced debris, but we say debris, debris, debris. If something is blown up, then there is a lot of debris, a lot of little pieces left scattered around after something has been blown up or destroyed or wrecked, right? We call that debris, debris. So these guys, they're clinging or holding on to pieces of debris in the water, and they're hoping for rescue. They're hoping people will come to save them. Well, hours turned into days. Time is going along, going along. No one is coming to save them. The men faced great fear like never before. Yeah, undoubtedly, this was almost without a doubt the scariest thing to happen to these guys in the war. I mean, I can't imagine anything scarier than this. Okay, so there's the fear to deal with, but there's also a plethora of other issues. Plethora just means there's a lot of other problems to deal with. Dehydration means a lack of water. They don't have enough fresh water. Sunburn, the sun is beating down on them, really harming their skin, okay, cooking them. And the hot sun, the heat in general, it just made everything worse. But an even bigger threat was the behemoth size of the ocean and the endless waves. Yeah, these behemoth waves all around. We can say behemoth or we can say behemoth, okay? Both are okay. There's these giant waves all around. I would add, I feel like the biggest threat here is the sharks, right? It seems like the sharks and maybe some behemoth sharks as well. Some of these sharks might be really large in size. So all of that's to say that these guys really have their plates full. They really have their plates full, or we can say they have a lot on their plate. In other words, they have a lot to deal with. For 4 long days, the crew faced shark attack after shark attack. So, wave after wave of attack from these sharks. Okay, so, the sharks attack, and then there's, a little lull in the attacks. There's like this period of pause between the attacks. There's a period of time where nothing's happening, and then another attack. So all of these waves of attack, terrible. The ocean became a fight for survival. So they're really fighting for their lives. Each moment, each second, each minute was a battle against the sharks, and the men's courage to stay alive was pushed to the limit, okay? These guys and their sanity was really pushed to the limit, okay? What does that mean? It means they were pushed to the edge. They were pushed to their breaking points, okay? Yeah, this is a really high intensity situation where a lot is demanded of them mentally and physically, right? A lot is being asked of them to survive in order to survive, right? So they knew this was a sink or swim situation. We talked about this idiom in depth already. Basically, this is saying that these guys know, they are well aware that they're either going to fight really hard and survive or face some dire consequences like drowning, being sunburnt to death, starving, or being eaten by sharks, right? Well, just when all hope seemed lost, right? So this is a commonly seen expression, just when all hope seemed lost, okay? So this is the climax of the story. If we're telling a story, the climax is the most exciting part of the story. It's the part where the person reading the story or watching the movie or playing the game, they're really engrossed in the story, really pulled into the story, and they're wondering what is going to happen. The main character, is he going to survive? Is he going to be able to make it? That's the climax of a story. So at the climax of this story, on August 2nd, a plane on a routine patrol saw the survivors. So we've got an airplane passing overhead, right? Passing by, flying by. And it was just a routine patrol. A patrol is like you are responsible for this area. And let's say maybe once a week, you go around this area, you check on this area, you make sure this area is okay and that there are no problems there, right? This is routine. It's something they do on a regular basis, okay? And when they made this routine patrol, they saw the survivors. They caught sight of them, okay? So what happened next? Rescue operations started quickly. So right away, they tried to save these guys. And thank the heavens, 316 men were saved from the water. So this finally put an end to their nightmare. Now, maybe their nightmare has ended for the time being, but many of the men felt traumatized by the experience, right? Even after this was over, maybe they had nightmares about this experience and being stuck in the ocean surrounded by sharks. So I like this part of the story because it's kind of a reminder of the significance of this story, of why we even care about this story, right? The story of the USS Indianapolis, what does it do? It reminds us of what? It reminds us of the sacrifices made during wartime and the strong human spirit that fights to stay alive against all odds. So all of that is to say, basically, these guys and their bravery was incredible, okay? The willpower of the human spirit, as human beings, we are capable of doing a lot. We are capable of carrying out unthinkable, unimaginable tasks, right? If we persevere, if we keep going, it's shocking what humans are capable of, what we can do if we really put our minds and our bodies to it. So, against all odds, the deck was stacked against them. The deck was stacked against them. I'll just put AT, against them, okay? This is a really common expression that means, the odds were not in their favor. Like, their chances of surviving were really small, really slim. Slim odds for survival, or slim odds of survival, right? These guys, it's amazing they were able to survive, is basically what this means. Let's move on to my favorite part of my videos, the discussion question and the speaking practice. We're going to take a look at this question. I am going to take 1 minute and respond personally with my own answer to this question, and then it will be your turn. And I want you to push yourself to try and fill up that entire minute, fill up that whole minute with your talking, because the more we talk, the better it is for our English practice, right? So here's the question. What is your greatest fear? Do you think exposure therapy could help overcome it? I love this question, right? Hey, what is exposure therapy? Let's say that you're really afraid of spiders, okay? Like I was as a little kid. Exposure therapy means you expose yourself to that thing. You intentionally go and experience that thing in order to show yourself, hey, it's not as scary as maybe you thought it was, right? Like if you have a fear of heights, maybe you climb a tall ladder as exposure therapy to prove to yourself that you can do it. So I'm going to take 1 minute and reply to this with my answer. So as it turns out, My own personal greatest fear is definitely sharks. I told you guys about what happened with my sock and the spider as a little kid. And yes, that indeed was terrifying, sure, but it's nothing compared to the fear I had and still have surrounding sharks. Okay. I think sharks are so terrifying. And I could barely even research this story when I was making this video because it freaks me out so much. The idea that these poor souls, these poor guys, were stuck in the water getting picked off by sharks in their territory. Human beings don't belong in the middle of the ocean. They didn't stand a fighting chance, right? So I think that's terrible. I don't want any exposure therapy with sharks. No, thank you. All right, that was my response, my minute. Now it's your turn. Go ahead. Thank you guys so much. This has been another episode of Learn English with a Story. Once again, if you like this content, if you want to support my small YouTube channel, I'm just a small YouTuber, guys. Maybe 16,000 subs seems like a lot, but it's really not. And I'm trying to grow this channel. I'm trying to improve the quality of my videos and really do my best to make them as high quality as I can for you guys. So what I would like to ask from you, a small favor, click like on this video, leave me a comment telling me what your greatest fear is. Is it sharks? Is it spiders? Is it heights? Is it the dark? You can let me know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed, of course. And I'm going to put another one of my videos up on the screen here. Go click on it. Go watch it. Let's keep the study session going. I'll meet you there.